Good morning, everyone. Yeah, that's the good morning when you have partied long, had a few extra drinks because they were so good, and maybe let's give it another try. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, that's a better one. So my wife thinks when I kind of come out to Vegas, it's all fun, there's no work. But you guys know that. That's not true, right? You guys work hard the whole day long, absorbing all the cool technology. And then, of course, we also have some fun. But it's funny because when I reach home tomorrow, my wife is going to give me a task. And that task typically uses one of these tools. And these tools have actually gotten a lot better, by the way, right? They were invented in early 1900, if you know the history of it. And it used to be a big a diesel generator kind of a thing that used to be pulled in a horse cart. And it was invented in the British era, so the Queen used to hire these people with long hoses to clean her room and whatnot. So that's the story. And eventually, as things got better, they have changed into these form factors. Luckily for me, it has also gotten here, right? And this evolution of vacuum cleaners is a testament to how it makes our lives easier, because you couldn't have taken my previous version of the vacuum cleaner and made this. Oh, by the way, actually, it now becomes this soon, because I think Roomba got acquired by Amazon. So it all becomes AWS controlled. But the fundamental premise I'm talking about here is, if you look at a very consumer-centric thing like what I need to do when I go back home, this replatforming of technology made it possible for you to do very, very, very advanced things that otherwise would not be possible and would take away a lot of effort and mundane kind of chores. And so fundamentally, I think when we go back to our workplaces, I think IT is getting defined exactly in the same way. It is getting replatformed. And clearly for you who are in reInvent, the fact that you're embracing cloud in the way it actually matters to you, the mix and match of how you want to use your on-premises technologies, the old legacy technologies, the older applications, but also building on the new, is a testament of what is happening in both our consumer lives and in our professional lives. There is another key thing that we are all kind of, when we go back to our Twitter feeds or news feeds, we are seeing a lot of macroeconomic landscape that is changing very, very quickly, which is people are worried the demand is going to slow down. People are worried their data is going to be stolen, because in this last decade, we have built our businesses around insights into data, and data becomes the key way for us to drive a lot of insights into our business. And you will see one of my co-presenters here from Regeneron who's going to come and talk about how they reinvented their own functioning in their company by using data effectively. Clearly, hiring was a problem. In the last couple of years, it's been very hard to find skilled people to come and do the job for you. So a lot of these things are happening. On top of that, we see from our customers that every week there is some kind of a data breach happening, just to our customers. Across the globe, there are hundreds of data breaches happening every day. And most times, it's like one of those things when I see that, when I go to some news website that says, oh, men over 50 have 70% higher chance of a cardiac arrest. It's like, yeah, that's happening to those men who are over 50. I am not in one of those people, right? It's not going to happen to me. This stat also has become something to the effect of, hey, it's not going to happen to my infrastructure because it's all so well secured. But the reality is there is always something that's going to be letting that intruder in, and kind of it becoming a real threat to you, to your business in these times where you will have people who cannot manage it from a human perspective. You need to rely on these systems, and data becomes core. So all in all, I think very interesting era for a person in the IT space to kind of be and thrive. But I think we also have technologies that have been made possible because of this reinvention, that if you're doing it the right way, you will be able to both mitigate the threats to your business overall, from a how you operate it, how you secure it perspective, but also keep modernizing, which was the first example of what I gave with the vacuum cleaner, how it evolved from being, with bags to bagless to now automatically kind of shipping away those dirt into those bins that you go and empty. So that is the modernization that is happening. And so Druva has been very, very fortunate that we started our journey in a very, very modernized fashion by building all of the data protection and data security principles into what we call the Druva Resiliency Cloud. And this Druva Resiliency Cloud relied on the fact that we will not build anything for keeping data on-prem, which could be compromised, which could be insecure. We built it in an air-gapped fashion, but also built in the same simplicity where with a simple console you could manage, so with a simple API you could manage how you want to protect your data for applications across the board, all the way from your endpoints, your laptops, to public cloud workloads, to hybrid cloud workloads, the workloads you want to leave behind in the data center, as well as your cloud applications, SaaS applications like Office 365. And this is what kind of this adoption looks like for us. With the love of our customers and the trust they have in us, they've really helped us make a really at-scale SaaS system work, which now becomes very simple for customers to say, look, my CRM is in the cloud, my business intelligence in the cloud, then why does my data protection need to be on-prem, right? So this is the journey that we have been on. Now, clearly, we are on a very early stage of the journey. There are a lot of different changes still continuing to happen that have been accelerated by the last couple of years, or they kind of continue to evolve, like the new digitization initiatives or multi-cloud initiatives. There are new threat models that are coming into forces. The new workplace doesn't seem the same before. You always have a hybrid work model where your data operators, your cloud operations team is sitting globally, and now you don't know which are they accessing it from a malware-infected machine or not. Then you have clearly people going into more the OpEx mode of purchasing, pay what you use, pay per drink model. And clearly the interconnected systems across the board have a big impact. Like for example, security is a prime example, where security is not just about one component. Just because you protect one area of your production application well, doesn't mean it's secure. What about the secondary copy of it? What about the in-transit pieces of it? What about the east-west traffic firewalling? There's a lot of stuff that's going on. And fundamentally, in our world, in the data world, fundamentally the question that gets asked are, the data I have kept as a secondary copy, is it safe? Is it fully recoverable when things go wrong? And things will go wrong someday, not just because of human errors, but also because of threat actors who are both motivated by geopolitical changes or just unhappy, disgruntled employees. How secure is my data against all the malware infections and the threats that the software keeps opening up? And then if they're infected, how do I now recover from it and come back to a clean state? So all of these are very, very fundamental questions. And a lot of what we will talk today through the journey Regeneron has seen and what we have seen with our customers as Druva, we will share that with you, and that is what the key takeaway for you is going to be from this session. So without further delay, let me invite on stage Kurt from Regeneron. He's a senior architect for Regeneron, to come and share his security and data journey with us. Kurt?
Good morning, everyone. It's really hard to see if the lights are ready.
Yeah.
So a couple little slides about Regeneron. I've been there about 7 years. My main responsibility is backup and disaster recovery. Let me click through this. How do I go forward?
The green button? This one.
Okay. So again, just a couple slides about Regeneron. Here's some self-promotion on what we've done. If you look at the bottom right with the 2 million exomes, I mean that's a lot in Amazon, and the way we can now analyze and really bring drugs to market much quicker with using AWS to provide that scalability and agility that we really need to, and our scientists are looking for. So when COVID hit, we I guess it was March of 2020, we sent about 85% of our workforce home. And, that was the most people we've ever had remote. The second was like a couple snow days we had up in Albany that people left, but it was really, most of our people were now working from home. And, with AWS and the scalability, we could meet all of our needs of the business. Our scientists kicked into high gear. They were looking for, not a cure necessarily, but a medicine for COVID. So they were, in their labs, looking at the data, analyzing data, running more data, and it was because of AWS, we really could keep up with that demand of the scientists.
So I think from a timing perspective,
Yeah.
It was the first time you had sent all your scientists away, kind of a thing.
Initially they were,
because of
right.
the situation.
Right.
But then this was also the time that your scientists had to work extra hard in order to bring innovation to the humanity and aid this the society to kind of solve for it, right?
Right. Yep. So we started our cloud journey in probably like 2015, early on, a couple small things, and our CIO, we decided we didn't want to build data centers. That's not our job. That's not our business. We want to build laboratories, build manufacturing plants, and so again, go into AWS, and everything is cloud first. And we still have 3 data centers with a smaller footprint now, and we'll never be 100% cloud, especially on the manufacturing side. A lot of that data needs to stay close to the manufacturing plant, but we just didn't want to build data centers anymore. So here's some of the reasons, our business case of why we're AWS and going to the cloud. Some hard values, some soft values. There's definitely was some cost savings, but more importantly, it was the speed, agility, and growth that we could analyze our data now. Typically, drug discovery is about 10 years. We've reduced it to about 4 or 5 years, and even during COVID, we accelerated that even more to come up with our cocktail for COVID. So 2015 again, that's when we really started our journey. Small little footprint. I think we had two accounts to start off with, and we just kept growing that and growing that. Started using EC2, RDS, S3. We built our data platform in AWS. Our high compute, we moved all of that high performance compute up there. And then, of course, ultimately we moved all of our backups up there using Druva. We're using it for our endpoints. We use InSync, our on-premise virtual environment, for our AWS workloads, and in our SaaS applications as well. So started small. We had a small remote site in London, kind of our proof of concept with Druva. So we enabled Phoenix for that small VM environment. Once we were satisfied with the results, we did our testing. We started deploying it to our other sites. We did files, the NAS. We have a few large NAS filers in a couple different data centers. They acquire all the data from all the scientists. AWS native workloads, we started using Cloud Ranger to back up. And then we went back on premise and did some of our Oracle and SQL, and ultimately SaaS. We M365, so we're using InSync to back up that as well.
So as you started your journey, Kurt, with the branch offices, and if you click one more on the slide, you'll see that you've gone through multiple workloads evaluation. But what was the initial hesitancy to kind of adopt something in the cloud, especially for data protection, where if you walk around the halls today, most vendors are saying, let me give you a box, and that's what is your data protection strategy. What was your thinking, and how did you kind of overcome internal objections to what was being done in a legacy fashion?
Well, and we had a lot of those boxes.
Okay.
We had a couple, and we even had some tape. Some of our legacy applications were still running tape, and we couldn't keep up with the growth of the company. We were just so much data, And it was constantly adding more storage shells, more disk, and we couldn't keep up with it. Again, we didn't want to expand data centers.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of hesitation. It was, we're a cloud-first company, so it made a lot of sense to start moving that up.
So your leadership was leaning in on more a cloud-first strategy,
Yes.
clearly. And the pain you had seen of keeping up those boxes and adding more disks as you generated a lot of data, volume of data for you guys with life sciences is a lot more than typical
petabytes,
company in petabytes. And for that large scale, you said, fine, I think let's lean in and try out. And that's when the branch office experiment started. And then now you have kind of grown.
Correct, yep.
Fantastic.
I think, back to you.
Cool. Yeah, so I think as you saw, Kurt described some of the classic journeys that we see with our customers. And everybody has a little bit of a different journey on what they're doing with the data protection aspect of it. And clearly for legacy reasons, not everything is quickly ready to go. I think you just have to find those inflection points where you can genuinely move the data to the right architecture and get you set up for that fun day when you at least have a lot more control and visibility into what you're doing. But as you really kind of go from taking backups, which was the core idea of how a lot of the data protection companies have come through, the last 2 years have been really, really eye-opening in the sense of how this has become the last bastion for all of the security attacks that could happen on your data, and this becomes your point that needs to be available to you when those attacks happen. And this becomes even more important because now clearly every enterprise today has data in silos. They have some data in data centers, can't avoid that. They have a lot of data coming into AWS and even other clouds. And they have their branch offices that still remain. They still need to do business that way. So your data is now all the way from the edge to the cloud. There are many places you have very mission-critical data that can be used to compromise your enterprise and your business continuity. Clearly, we are seeing so many stories come up on a day-to-day basis on how ransomware attacks are happening. Now, as customers move to the cloud, they also need the enterprise transformation doesn't happen without having all the same tooling that you had for your on-premises workloads that you were running. A lot of the initial adoption, clearly we know for AWS, was from the developer-led movement, where a lot of developers moved. They also built tooling along with it for their dev environments. But enterprise IT, I think teams like Kurt, when they look at it, they're looking for enterprise readiness from everything that they have been building for the last decade, and they have actually matured an operation where they're engineering and then they go and operate those things. And as you bring those workloads to the cloud side of the world, you need the same level of enterprise readiness. So one of the key features that we announced in the last, earlier this year, was the Amazon EC2 backup to Druva Cloud. A lot of people today still rely on snapshots, and those snapshots reside in the customer accounts, and they primarily sit as snapshots in various different multiple accounts that they may have, not really thinking about, is it resilient? And when you look at the AWS best practices, they ask you to put it in multiple different regions, multiple different availability zones, multiple different accounts, for you to genuinely have a very well thought through structured data protection architecture. Now, when you start to really implement it in the way in your EBS, for example, taking those snapshots, putting it, spraying 3 copies of it, or however you want to design it, some of yours have data governance issues where the local laws dictate that you need to keep a copy in a certain country, you start to really see a bloat of this information that happens. So Druva thought of bringing the same ease of use to these public cloud workloads. And we started off with EC2, and we've just seen a huge amount of adoption, where we compress, deduplicate these copies, and these are backed up to Druva Cloud. Now, the best practices of keeping these copies in the right place at the right time is our responsibility based on the policy that customers set. And now you're now able to take both the short-term data that you need to access immediately, like the way you would do in a snapshot, for easy access for short-term retention topics. But for longer-term data protection and backup, you move it to Druva Cloud. So this has been a big move as well. And on the security side, given that the Druva is fundamentally architected air-gapped security foundation environment gives you a lot of different aspects of security, all the way from certifications to really keeping across the account copies. And then we'll talk about more on how this bad actor kind of comes in, and I'll show you a demo of what we actually do. Really enables you to go home, think safely without worrying about your data protection and data security aspect of it.
Yeah, and Anjan, that was our big reason for starting to look at excuse me, EC2 backup is the air gapped.
Yeah.
That was one of our biggest concern. Just they're sitting in our account, all of our snapshots. Now we can move them, into Druva. And there is a cost savings, but it was really just the air gap, to get those out of our account and make them more secure.
Exactly. So not only your primary thing of air gap is solved, but also you don't have to now maintain so many different copies and silos of data. So now I think it's a lot more fun when you talk about product and technology, when you see it in action. We wanted to actually probably do a live one, but it was hard to predict the network and console and how they experience. So we recorded a few things for you. And this is about, the scenario is this, right? There is an attack going to happen. It is not a question of if, it is a question of when. Every enterprise is going to be tested for their resiliency against security. Now, there are three phases to this attack lifecycle. One is the pre-attack readiness. When you have set up things, you have set up your firewall, you have set up your access controls, you've used all your different tooling to make sure you never get attacked, because the surface area that you have really created for yourself, you have made it so minimal that the chances of an attack come down. It's never zero, right? Now, once the attack happens, if something goes wrong, most of the data protection teams today are not embraced into the data security lifecycle. Forget data protection teams. Even enterprises that we sometimes speak with, we find out that they don't have an operating model to react to when an attack is happening. Imagine an attack happens tomorrow, and then your IT guy says, hey, my AD is compromised, there is attack going on, these accounts are getting deleted. What do you do next? Do you shut off the whole enterprise network? Do you call your boss and say attack is happening? What is the modus operandi? And now a lot of companies have become a lot more smart about it. They really run through fire drills, and they actually understand what needs to be done, who needs to call who, what is the number to call, which switch to be turned off. All of that is in place for many, but there is always an evolving model of that fire drill, of that what you really do when an attack happens. But for data protection teams, in order to meaningfully participate in this journey, they really need to be able to provide those insights to those security teams that are actually managing the incident, and be able to help them come out of that incident response situation really, really quickly. So do you know when an attack happens, typically how long it takes for somebody to recover from it and say we are now back into regular operating mode and clean state? Any guesses in the room? Sorry? A month? Very, very close. Anybody else? I think days are like, you've done a phenomenal job. You get an A+ on it. I think most of customers we have helped, it gets to months, because by the time you really isolate that down, run through your scanning, make sure that each machine that you are now suspecting could be not clean, it takes many, many iterations to kind of get there. So I think the average is somewhere between 3 or 4 weeks is what we have heard. And Kurt, I don't know, from your talking to all of your peers in the industry, I think that seems like a normal time it takes.
Yeah, and fortunately we haven't had that yet, but talking to our InfoSec team, that's what they're seeing and they're hearing in the industry as well.
Because it's also laws of physics, because you have to scan through so much of data, and just like that's the time it takes to tell it's clean or not.
They have all their tools. They want to do their investigation to see what that good recovery point is.
Exactly. And then once you have said, okay, fine, we cleaned up those machines that were infected, because typically it is like a small percentage of your system that they get through. They don't get through to everything. You have to say, like, I have a way to take these backups of these machines that I know are clean, and I can go back to that time snapshot T0 where it was clean, and then be able to recover it with confidence, right? These are the 3 big steps in a security life cycle as you see it. So let's watch what happens when you first set it up fundamentally in a solid way, and I'm going to show you everything Druva has built in order to make sure that initially when you set it up in a solid way so that your data protection backup environment doesn't go bad. So this is our console that you're seeing. So we have basic things like multi-factor authentication in there to help you. We also have something called geofencing, where we can understand where the admins are logging in from. And we also have a very granular role-based access control. So each admin gets a specific role and access. Now you can see here, the admin logins as well as the API accesses could be coming in from anywhere. We show you where they're coming in. And typically, there is a standard pattern to where your admins come in from. So it's not like they suddenly show up from Nigeria, right? And the same with API access. So you can see where your API accesses are happening and where your admins are coming. So that is the first thing you can geofence and say, limit the admins coming in only from USA or from Europe if your admins are there. There is something that's also we have that's called rollback actions. Once something goes wrong, somebody goes and deletes, you can actually set a rollback action for these, and these never get deleted till you actually confirm or there is a time duration that it stays. So even if a malicious guy comes in and deletes these backups, we save them in what we could think of it as a recycle bin, immutable recycle bin, where your snapshots are still not deleted. So which is a huge thing for people, because we have had customers where they said, oh shit, it was not me, this malicious guy impersonated the admin, came in, and then now we can easily roll it back to their previous snapshot. So it really helps them, and that's the power of SaaS, right? It's all in the cloud, we can control it. So as you can see here, we also have something that's called data lock. If you're really sure that this data needs to be protected at any cost, you just lock it upfront with your policy switch, and then it'll never be kind of deleted. It can never be deleted. It can never be mutated. And on top of all this, we have insights for you to say, hey, there is an unusual data activity happening in your environment. So all of these are foundational to what you have to run your environment in the first place. So you can see that you have multi-factor authentication, geofencing, data lock, and rollback setups that are available to you, making it almost fairly hard to penetrate this data protection layer. Now, let's look at the second phase. You had all this, you had a great Druva backup stuff, but Druva is not the one they're attacking first. They're attacking something like an AD. They're attacking some other systems that had a vulnerability or a Windows machine, right? So when that attack happens, you need to help with the security team's investigation portfolio. So let's see what you can do there. So typically when a ransomware attack is initiated, these are the screens that, some command prompt rolls up and you see this, ransom box where they're like, pay me in Bitcoin and whatnot. By the way, a lot of enterprises don't even know how to go start paying in Bitcoin, and they have to figure that out for the first couple of days if they're even thinking about paying. But then here, the admin has access to all the anomalies and the files that have been tampered with, right? We can see the anomaly detection of what is happening. You can see which files were encrypted when. So this suddenly gives you an insight to provide to your security teams on what to do with this data, and you start to know how much of the primary production data, the backup of it, was there. Now you can go select the files that you think are anomalous and put them into quarantine, so that you don't want to kind of reinfect the whole thing by downloading those backups. So you can quarantine those things. And also, we have a strong alerting and audit trails to kind of go with which files changed what. You can look at all the aspects, the metadata of those files that went wrong, what kind of encryptions. It even helps you figure out what kind of an attack has happened on your environment. Typically, in most of the data protection cases, if these tools are not with you, you are just an outsider to this whole investigation from the security teams. You cannot participate effectively. So you can now download detailed logs where you are now able to get an Excel file with all the file that changes. You can highlight the ones that really matter to you, and then do you know what to deal with them. On top of it, if you are really inclined to go deeper and you have a specific attribute you want to search, we have a feature that's called federated search. You can actually build up a lot more complex searches and look for the file types and hashes and a lot of other details as well. So this is while the attack was going on. Now let's go and understand, okay, the attack is understood. We understand what kind of a malware was in your system or who attacked it. Now let's go and make sure that we know which one to recover from. So in the recovery phase, this is how it looks like. So you can do file scans before you recover. You don't want to recover bad stuff. So we have an inbuilt file scanning system in the cloud available to you. But if you want to plug in your own hashes or bring in your own file scanners, we can also allow for that. And typically, the security team will tell you this is the kind of file hash you will see when this particular attack happened. So the restore process is fairly standard from how you would otherwise restore your data backup as well. And when you hit restore, you can either put it into a sandbox location, which is very important to do. And also you can enable malicious file scan along with it. Make sure that that file you're recovering doesn't have those scans. So if you run through Skiles, it'll identify which of these documents match with the hash that you had set up, and you can then download that file report. Another very innovative technology that Druva has brought in the security aspect is what we call the curated recovery, where if the encryption has happened over a long time, you don't know which versions of these files had these infections. So you want to bring out only the version of the file that actually, like in a file share, the version that was not malicious. So now we can construct back, based on this scanning, the latest versions of all the files that are clean and are easy to recover. So that saves you a ton of time in terms of figuring out which of these files need to be recovered and which ones need to be scanned. So you basically go in, set your time date. You can pick the file server that you want to kind of do that curated recovery for. As you can see, the user experience of this is really, really simple. You don't really need to be a super security expert to go through and understand this. You can include or exclude file extensions that you don't want in that curation. And then you get a detailed result of the job that you had triggered in terms of curating it. And you can restore the curated snapshots back into the place where you originally intended them to be. So hope that gives you a sense of how an attack happens. And this is what we have, Druva has. We are a cloud provider. A lot of customers call us that something happened, and a lot of times, like the most used feature is this curation. The second most used feature is what we call the kind of the recycle bin concept of it. Because the attackers don't know. They thought they kind of deleted everything that they were supposed to by access of API or whatever. And then they suddenly, when the real admin calls us and saying, hey, we never authorized somebody to delete those backups. Can you help us? We have that recycle bin available for, I think the default is 7 days, where you can actually start to move back stuff without really causing the biggest harm that you had in your environment. So fundamentally, I think, again, I highly encourage all of you, as you go back into your environments, to think about the data security model. It's an evolving model. It is not a static model. It's very important to know what your processes look like, what your preparedness look like when an incident is going to happen. You have to do discovery of your security architecture, assess your risks, and design with it. And of course, Druva data protection is just a part of this full story. There are many other pieces to this whole overall architecture that needs to come together in order to successfully mitigate. With the confidence that we had, and just wanted to kind of ask Kurt, like, from everything as an IT practitioner, any key advice to your coworkers and colleagues here that want to learn from how you've designed your security best practices?
Yeah, and still designing, right? It's definitely a work in progress, and constantly evolving. This is, one of the tools that we have. We have many tools. What we thought was important is getting all these alerts is great, but we really have to make sure there are eyes on these. Right? We just can't have alerts and then no one actions them. So we've integrated with our with Splunk, and now that goes to our security NOC, and they're analyzing the UDA, the unusual data activity alerts. But constantly evolving, right? They're looking other ways to enhance and increase our protection.
Yeah, it's a cat and mouse game. You're constantly kind of trying to one-up them, and hopefully you guys stay ahead. But I think this is where the confidence for Druva also is that we announced a data resiliency guarantee of up to $10 million protection for our customers, where we didn't want to just guarantee because it was a marketing program, but we actually laid out SLAs around cyber risk, human risks, in terms of what we are doing for confidentiality, immutability, reliability, durability, and actually we have put those SLAs in there. And for our customers who actually chose to be part of that program, we give them the SLA and measurability of these things with it so that they know that they have been protected in terms of all of these SLAs that we have promised, instead of just saying, look, my backup is going to work for you, which is usually just one part of the durability or reliability part of it. So I think that's the confidence, and that's thanks to a lot of our customers who have chosen Druva as a partner for their kind of the data protection journey. So hopefully you will kind of visit the booth, learn more, and if you have any questions, we are here, me and Kurt are here, going to be here for the next couple of minutes to answer any questions you may have. But otherwise, you guys have a great rest of the day, and thank you for being here, and thank you for a great crowd.